you looking for a different level of truth about your challenges and struggles? Then be a part of the Yes and podcast, hosted by empowerment strategist and trauma specialist Jennifer Whitaker. Every Wednesday, we challenge conventional thinking on topics like trauma, healing, and so much more. Learn life lessons and great nuggets of wisdom from guests who've moved through their pain and suffering to discover a new purpose in life. Now, here's your host, Jennifer Whitaker.
Hey everyone, this is Jennifer Whitaker. So welcome everybody. You're listening to Yes And. If you're interested in learning more about the Yes And podcast, or if you want to follow, listen to back episodes on the player, simply go to my website at jenniferwhitaker.com and you'll find everything you need to know there. Tonight's guest is Victoria English Martin, and Victoria is an integrative nutrition coach, a Pilates instructor, and a mother of 4. Nutrition and fitness have been her passion for as long as she can remember. She's from Miami, and she's lived in Denver, Colorado for the last 3 years. In 2018, just a few months after a clear mammogram, she found a lump in her breast. 4 days later, her fears were confirmed. She had stage 2B breast cancer. What followed was a grueling year of treatment, along with a whole new perspective on life and how to fit into the world. Her new chapter is devoted to advocating for and raising awareness about triple negative breast cancer, along with how survivors of not just cancer, but all crises navigate through a new normal. She's here to share stories. And let me throw this in. She's going to be starting her own podcast soon. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And her podcast will be called After the Crisis with Victoria. And on her show, she's going to be sharing stories of people who feel that they're supposed to be fine, put on a brave face for others, but may be struggling inside themselves. And man, doesn't that sound like so many of us in the world today. Additionally, she's going to assist in empowering others in creating a healthier body, mind, and spirit. Her coaching approach looks at the whole person as that person strives for balance and wholeness each day. Victoria, it's an honor to have you with us. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jennifer. I'm so happy to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, learn about you, and share my story.
Yeah, thank you. So first of all, I don't have a lot of experience with breast cancer, so I'm really not clear on what triple negative is and how that differs from anything else. Can we just jump in and with a little bit explaining what that is?
Absolutely. I'm happy for you that you don't have experience with breast cancer, and I didn't either until April of 2018. Like you said in the intro, I had a clear mammogram. I started getting them once I turned 40, and every year was fine. No issues, had never been called back for another imaging or anything like that. And I was shocked to find the lump that I found. I had had a clear mammogram. And one day after a workout, I was in the shower and was doing my monthly exam and found a significant size lump, and went to the doctor 4 days later. They did an ultrasound and said, yes, this is cancer, and we see it in a couple of lymph nodes. So that was something else. And what I learned just a few days later, thanks to my awesome medical team who really expedited the results and got me on track quickly, is that I had something called triple negative breast cancer. What that means, in many breast cancers, the majority of breast cancers that you hear about, they're hormone receptor positive. So that means that they respond to different treatments using hormones and different therapies. Triple negative does not have hormone receptive markers. So that means that it is it's rare. It strikes 10 to 20% of breast cancer patients. It typically strikes women under the age of 50 and is found oftentimes in women when they are pregnant, nursing, going through a lot of hormonal changes. So unfortunately, it can be easily mistaken for something during a hormone change. I was in perimenopause, a clogged milk duct if a mother is nursing. And so unfortunately, it does spread very quickly. Like wildfire is what my doctor said. So there are different types of breast cancer. Some of them are slow growing, so they can be treated in a less aggressive manner. The triple negative, typically they, like I said, they race you into treatment. After my diagnosis, it was just a blur of scans and all sorts of imaging to make sure that it hadn't metastasized into my bones or organs. Thankfully, it had not, but it had spread to several lymph nodes. So we're talking in a few months' time, it had not only grown to a palpable mass that I could feel easily, but had started to go up that chain of lymph nodes. So it's a scary, it's a very scary diagnosis. And unfortunately, like I said, one that there's not a lot of awareness around, and takes more women than it should because of that, because people often think that they have the luxury of time. Well, let me give it a few months, see if it goes away. Let me wait until after my cycle and see how it feels. And I'm here to advocate and urge women, number one, to get their mammograms, to do their self-exams. If you feel something, push your doctor, push your medical team to explore and find out what that is. Because unfortunately, I've seen too many women who did wait, or whose medical said, let me check you again in a few months. And by the time they went back, it was too late. It had metastasized. So I just feel that it's my duty as a survivor. I beat the clock barely. So I'm very passionate about spreading awareness about breast cancer in general, but especially about triple negative.
Yeah, so it sounds like there's a lot going on here. It's better to be safe than sorry if you find anything, you know, yeah, because so many people do put that off.
They do. And I think,
Mhm.
especially as women, our nature often is to take care of others. And, oh, well, I've got an appointment, or work ran late. I've got, my daughter has an appointment. Let me go ahead and reschedule that mammogram for a month or two from now.
Mhm.
And I would just urge anyone to put yourself first when it comes to your health. It's
Yeah.
okay. You're doing your family, your friends, your workplace, everyone a favor by doing that for yourself.
Right. And also emphasizing the importance of self exams on a regular basis, because
Yes.
this was a very short time after you had just had a mammogram. So, who would think that you would have a mammogram? And what did you say, 2 months later?
No,
A
it was
few months, a few
um,
months. Okay.
maybe 6 months, something like that.
Okay.
But the fact that it had spread to stage 2B so quickly is what blew me away. And
Mhm.
that, I mean, it was one of those things where when I felt it in the shower, I said, I could have sworn that wasn't there the last time I took a shower, which would have been the day before or that
Right.
morning. You know, it's just kind of one of those moments where you said, wait a minute, that feels really off.
Yeah.
So I'm lucky that it was in a spot that I could feel it. Um, but again, it's we do have to look out for ourselves and advocate for ourselves.
Yeah. Well, Victoria, as a trauma specialist, I am really curious. What's helping you get through this? Because April of 2018 wasn't terribly long ago. What's helping you get through this, and what's helping you survive this? What's your resource, and like what do you turn to for strength and
That's
stability?
that's a great question. Um, when it first happened, I'm sure you can understand, especially as a trauma specialist, you know, the
Mhm.
stages. Um, you know, we just buckled down, you
Mhm.
know, kind of, okay, this is war. It's time to go into battle. So I don't remember a lot of emotion in the beginning. It was just hurry up, let's hurry up and get this going. And So it was very much, we were just laser focused on doing what we needed to do. I didn't even have time to fly back to Florida to visit my older children who were in college, and my father. I had to break the news to them via FaceTime because
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even have time. My doctor said, no, 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 there's no time for trips. We've got to get into this. So it
Mm-hmm.
was very fast. And within 2 weeks of starting chemo, my hair was falling out. It was so much so fast. So I think I was in survival mode at the time.
Absolutely. How could you not be?
Right.
Yeah.
And there during treatment, I did rely a lot on my higher power, my faith.
Mm-hmm.
I put on a brave face a lot for
Mm-hmm.
people and would go into my private area in my room, even with my family. Sometimes I just couldn't let myself be vulnerable. So I would go often just to my room and just kind of fall on my knees and pray and ask for this terror to be taken from me, because I really didn't know what to do with all of these feelings. And as a mother, I was just so worried about my children and their experiences as we navigated this completely foreign
Mm-hmm.
territory. Um, so I worked a lot on being present. I also I would spend quite a bit of time visualizing
Mm-hmm.
myself in the future, visualizing myself healthy again, visualizing my
Mm-hmm.
hair growing back, visualizing myself out hiking, doing
Mm-hmm.
things that I love with my youngest daughter who's in middle school now. Um, I did a lot of connecting with nature, walked a
Mm-hmm.
lot, observed the seasons, grounded myself, would take off my shoes and just feel the earth, things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I love that you mentioned visualization, because people like Eckhart Tolle, Dr. Joe Dispenza, Dr. Greg Braden, Dr. Bruce Lipton, all of these people who really talk about healing and what it
Mhm.
really truly takes to heal and to get where you want to be in life. Visualization
Mhm.
is so, so important. And it's not just imagining what you want for yourself. It's imagining it as if it's already happened.
Yes.
And then if you can bring in a feeling, like
Mhm.
a feeling of gratitude or appreciation, or what is it going to feel like when I have my hair back, or what is it
Yes.
going to feel like whenever I have, my life back, or all of this other stuff. Um, that is so important. And so I love that you brought that up. And I love that you mentioned that, because that's something that comes up a lot with clients on how to survive trauma.
Yes. It was really helpful. And uh, what was beautiful was I was really in the trenches of treatment during the summer of 2018,
Mm-hmm.
and we really couldn't do much. We didn't really go anywhere, couldn't do much of anything. And I would always talk to my daughter about next summer. Oh, next summer we're going to be doing this. Next summer we'll be doing that. And it was such a beautiful thing this past summer, which just ended. We went back to school obviously in August, but we were able to do some of those things. And when we would go up to the mountains, in June or July, and I'm still limited in what I can do, but I had enough hair that I could feel the breeze blow through it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and just being back in nature and hiking with her and being able to say to her, do you remember last summer when we would visualize hiking and we
Mm-hmm.
would talk about the pine needles crunching under our feet and
Mm-hmm.
and the sun and the blue sky and the aspen trees, and she'd say, yeah, I remember. And I said, look, we're here, we're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just a really beautiful circle of of just thinking about where we've been and where we've
Mm-hmm.
come and where we're going, because I am still limited in some of the things I can do. I'm dealing with a lot of after effects of
Mm-hmm.
treatment, but it is just a beautiful thing to
Mm-hmm.
experience what you visualized for so long.
Yeah.
and during such dark times.
Yeah. Now, is it okay if I ask about what are some of the after effects? I don't know what those might be, and I would imagine a lot of our listeners might not know what the after effects of treatment might be.
Yes. Yes. Well, that that was a catalyst. The after effects, I knew during treatment that I was going to do something. I had
Mhm.
no idea what I would do, but I thought with my background and my and just my nature to help and serve others, I knew I would do something. I thought it would be more centered around actual breast cancer, but what I'm learning is the real need is to talk about life after
Mhm.
cancer, life after the crisis, hence the name of my
Mhm.
endeavor. Um, so after cancer, you may see on Facebook sometimes women ringing the bell. I'm done
Mhm.
with treatment, and everyone's
Mhm.
cheering, and there's the pink shirts and the family, and everyone's rooting for you, and that's beautiful.
Mhm.
And I was blessed to have a lot of love and support. I also saw women who didn't have that. And
Mhm.
that just really pulled at my soul because I couldn't imagine going through something like this alone.
Yeah.
Even though you do feel very alone going through it at times anyway.
Yeah.
But after cancer, women are left, well, all patients, but in my situation, women are left, first of all, we've been traumatized because we have lost our identity as
Mhm.
women. I lost my hair, I lost my eyelashes, my eyebrows, I lost my breasts, I lost my ovaries, my uterus. And at the time you're going through it, you're like, take whatever you need, take
Mhm.
whatever you have to take to get
Right.
rid of cancer. And I was very much about that, especially being in my 40s. I didn't need my reproductive organs. A lot of
Mhm.
women go through this in their 20s and 30s, and they
Yeah.
do.
Mhm.
Um, but so I was left, obviously, in a completely different body.
Mhm.
What I also struggle with now is I have an affected thyroid. I have
Mhm.
hypothyroidism because of the radiation. I have, we're not sure yet if it's rheumatoid arthritis or if it's fibromyalgia.
Mhm.
We're not sure, but I suffer with chronic pain,
Mhm.
inflammation in my joints, and just in my fascia in general. I deal with a lot of chronic pain, which is something that is really difficult to live with.
Mhm.
I have days where, like this morning, I had to work on my makeup today because I was crying from the pain. I had a really rough night last night.
Mhm.
So we deal with chronic pain. We deal with depression,
Mhm.
anxiety, flashbacks.
Mhm.
I didn't really process what I had been through until a few months after it was over.
Mhm.
And I was thrown for a loop because I've always been put on a happy face, keep going, look at the bright side, cup glasses half full. And I was blindsided by the emotional effects, after effects,
Yeah.
when I was finished with treatment.
Yeah. It sounds a lot like complex post-traumatic stress.
That
Would
was mentioned in my therapist's
Yeah,
office.
and that's what I work with a lot. That's been one of my biggest struggles in life is the effects of complex post-traumatic stress from developmental and intergenerational trauma.
Hmm.
And there is a lot of suffering that we go through. And you talk about helping people through all crises, not just cancer, because there's so many of us who put on a brave face. And when it comes to the emotional effects and what we experience inside of ourselves, like if you have a physical condition, it's one thing. But if you have a psychological or a mental or an emotional
Yes,
disconnect, then there's this attitude of, oh, just snap out of it or just
right.
make a choice. And it's not that simple.
Yes. And the women in I'm part of some wonderful support pages online,
Mhm.
virtual communities of women just like myself. And thank goodness we have each other. And
Mhm.
a common thread is, okay, treatment's over. Everyone else has gone on with their life. They're cheering for me. They're
Mhm.
saying, aren't you so happy to be alive? And of course we're happy to be alive.
Mhm.
But no one talks about life after, what it's going to be like.
Yeah.
And so, and you also, at least for me, I got to the point, I was tired of talking about myself. I was
Mhm.
tired of everyone doing the, are you okay? One of those, I'm like,
Yeah.
yes, I'm fine, but I wasn't fine.
Right.
I was not
Right.
fine at all.
Well,
And
it's like that. I know you're struggling, and so it's like the small talk when you don't know what to say to somebody who's
yeah,
struggling. It's like, "How you doing? Are you fine?" And it's like, "Oh, just."
yes, I'm just going to say I'm fine because I'm tired of talking about it and you wouldn't understand. But,
Right.
you know,
Exactly.
and then I thought, well, I have an opportunity because, like you said, yes, I walk around, I have some visible scars, you might say, but so many people are walking around and no one's wearing t-shirts for them. No one's cheering
Mhm.
for them. No one's creating support pages on social media to
Right.
cheer them on through their pain.
Right.
People are walking around far more wounded than I, even though my scars were on the outside. And and that's just put me in touch with a whole nother sense of purpose and intention in my life, that we all have our scars. We
Mhm.
all have our stuff that we are walking around with. And I think that if you can feel like you're being heard and you have some validation around that,
Mhm.
that's just the first step. And then you can start, perhaps, hopefully, to begin the healing process.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talk about, coming to a new normal. So
Mhm.
talk a little bit about your new normal. What is the new normal for Victoria?
Oh gosh, it's a lot different. I used to have endless energy.
Mhm.
uh, I was a mother of 4 children. 3 are older now, but I had my Pilates business. I was a fitness nut. I was people called me the green juice girl because I was big on juicing before anyone even knew what juicing was.
Mhm.
um, Again, that was a great lesson to others around me, because if I could get cancer, anyone could get cancer.
Mhm.
What?
Yeah. Well,
Victoria got
there's
cancer? The green juice girl got cancer?
there's more
uh,
that goes into a diagnosis of cancer than just what we eat and what we do
there
with our physical
sure
body. We have those
there sure is.
hidden
You and
parts
I
of our
touched
yeah,
on that.
yeah,
We
those
touched
hit
on that when we talked.
yeah, there's so much more that goes into it. I'm sorry I
Oh,
interrupted you.
no, but you're so right. And yes, I was the green juice girl, but I absolutely had stuff going on in my life that
Mhm.
certainly contributed, and helped manifest this dis-ease, which turned
Mhm.
into disease in my body.
Yeah.
Um, so my new normal is um, a lot of focus on nutrition.
Mhm.
I have dialed down my stress level enormously. I
Yay. Yay.
I yes, the filter for nonsense. I I I just don't take on a lot that I used to take on. I don't
Gives
take on
yeah,
other people's stuff.
it gives cut the crap a whole new meaning, right?
It really does. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I someone said the other day, so you used to manage about 9 lives, basically. You tried to manage nine lives. I said, yeah. Now I just try to manage this one. I took on everyone else's stuff. How can I help? How can I fix? How can I rescue?
Yeah.
All of that stuff. And now I've just dialed everything down,
Mm.
and I have a routine now of meditating in the morning. I used to tell myself my mind could never be still enough to do that. Well, it can be.
Mhm.
It's changed my life. It's changed my outlook. I like I said, I focus a lot on nutrition. I don't drink more. I don't I don't pay attention very often to the news because it's just negative and argumentative.
Mhm.
I I pay attention to details now. I can
Mhm.
find joy in, like I said, the crunch of pine needles under my feet
Mhm.
and just make my day.
Yes.
Little things like that. I'm not focused on I'm just not focused on how I look as much. My
Mhm.
external armor has
Mhm.
been taken away. So I focus on what's going on inside of me much more.
Yeah. I love to hear you say all of this stuff because, again, as a trauma specialist, I talk with my clients about the importance of paying attention to what you consume. And when I say what you consume, that is so much bigger than what you put in your mouth. It's what you put, like
Absolutely.
what's going in all of your senses. What are you
Hmm.
seeing every day? What are you listening to? What
Yes.
is in your environment? Because you're right, the news is toxic. And
Hmm.
that friend that or the group of friends that just can't let go of the gossip. They can't let go of
Yes.
the binge drinking. They can't let go of, oh my God, I have to wear the stilettos and the makeup or I
Yes.
can't go out of the house. It's like, I walk out of the house all the time with no makeup on and hair just
Right.
everywhere. I don't care. It's like,
Right. Right.
so like superficial things no longer matter. And, it really takes us to a deeper level of what matters. And the other side of what you're saying, whenever it comes to self care is so much more and so much deeper than massages and manicures. And
Yes.
oh my God, like it just,
I
it,
love that.
it's one of
That
my little triggers, like the self-care, like somebody's going to
Go
get a
get a
manicure for
mani-pedi.
self-care. And I'm like, no,
Yeah.
the mani-pedi is not self-care. Like the mani-pedi
I'm
might
not
feel
allowed to go
good.
get mani-pedis.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's not good
I'm
for
not
you.
allowed to because they don't want, the doctors don't, when you're
Yeah.
going through treatment and even after, because my counts are still not where they should be as far as
Mhm.
fighting infection, we're not allowed to get manicures and pedicures. I
Yeah.
save a boatload of money on hair and salon appointments. I can tell you.
Right. Yeah. But self care,
Um,
when we're truly taking care of ourselves, it's because we love ourselves enough to take care of
yes,
what's in here. It's not about that surface superficial. So, and
it's
sometimes
so
life does that.
true.
Sometimes life, like Brene Brown says, grabs you by the shoulders and shakes you and says, I'm not kidding.
And that, oh my goodness, that is so true. And when I
Yeah.
look back at my life before diagnosis, the universe was kind of giving me a little tap, a little, hey, a
Hmm.
little shake, and finally it
Yeah.
knocked me upside the head.
So what were the little signals that you now recognize that you ignored? I think that would be helpful for people to hear that
That's a
too.
great question. Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for asking.
Hmm.
And let me think. There were several. There were a lot. I think I was I focused so much on the people that I love and the people I cared about and tried so hard to it was probably a control issue. I was
Hmm.
trying to help. I
Hmm.
was trying to spare my children from making some mistakes that I could see heading their way. I was trying to spare them from heartbreak. I was trying to spare them from any sort of trauma or agony. But I was just trying to control and fix them
Yeah.
and rescue them.
I call help the sunny side of control when you go into the helpy helperton.
Yes, so helpy, helpy. My
Yes.
son was here visiting a couple of months ago, and he said something that really opened my eyes from his observation. He's a very, very old soul and a wise young man. And he said, Mom, you were trying so hard to fix us all and save us all, but really, you just made yourself really sick.
Hmm.
And I was
Yeah.
sick. I was sick emotionally, spiritually before I was physically sick with cancer.
Yeah.
I think I was a little just disconnected. Felt I felt like the universe was trying to tell me something big,
Hmm.
but I think I had wax in my ears. I was more centered on my will, my way of doing things, the way that I thought things should be,
Mhm.
and tried to force those. I tried to force that,
Mhm.
um, and it was met with resistance from others and within myself and the world in general. It just wasn't. It wasn't yielding to me, to my will.
Right.
And so I spent a lot of time feeling frustrated and useless. So that's changed. And again, just I think zoning out, wanting to numb feelings that I was uncomfortable with. I was part of the mommy wine culture.
Mhm.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere, mommy juice, mommy wine time, but it was really just using that to push down feelings that I had a low tolerance for, that I didn't want to feel, realities that I didn't want to face, situations in which I could not find a solution, or my solution wasn't working. So I just didn't want to think about it. So definitely, yeah, definitely that was a part of it. And again, just feeling generally unwell in a lot of areas. But again, on the outside, smiling and looking like everything was okay.
Yeah, exactly. And I love these realizations that you're coming to because, again, so many of them are things that I talk about with my clients. And you have to realize, and even on past episodes, you have to realize what your own motivations are every time you pop that cork. You have to know what your motivations are every time you're trying to butt into your kids' lives and
Yes.
tell them what to do or tell them what they need to do for themselves, because we really take so much of their power away from them when we bulldoze and try to clear the path so it's easy.
Oh, yeah. And what I realized
Mm-hmm.
is what message I was really sending to them by trying to help
Mm-hmm.
or fix. The message I was really sending is, you're not capable of doing this. So
Mm-hmm.
I need to do this for you. I
Yeah,
need to guide you through this because you don't know what you're doing.
right.
This won't go well if you navigate it on your own.
Mm-hmm.
And what kind of message is that? Really the message we want to send to the people
Right.
we love? Of course not. We want them to find their way. And I would say that, but my
Mhm.
actions said something very different. And so
Exactly.
that's been a big revelation that
Yeah.
when I was going through treatment, I thought, oh gosh, how are my kids going to do? Guess what? They did great. They did
Mm-hmm.
amazing.
Yeah.
They dug down and they found their strength. They found their resources because all of a sudden I wasn't as available as I used to be. I was sick,
Mm-hmm.
and we came out on the other side, and I'm like, look at you. You guys did great. You're
Yeah.
strong. You are warriors, just like your mom. So,
Right.
it was a beautiful thing. It brought me so much closer to them, and I have so much respect for them.
Yeah.
And I trust them, and I trust myself now to
Mm-hmm.
create some healthy boundaries. And
Yeah.
the ironic thing is now they come to me for more advice than ever
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not forcing it. I'm
Right.
just here to listen and guide when asked, when
Yes.
needed.
Yeah. And the reality of the world is the average person doesn't learn from history and doesn't learn from other people's mistakes. And it is my hope that the listeners of this episode are really listening to what you say, and that they are going to change that paradigm and listen from, and not saying other people's mistakes, but other people's aha moments and other people's realizations, because
Yeah,
these are universal.
they are. They
Yeah.
are. We're
And
all going through it on some level.
yeah, and they feed into so many different diagnoses and so many different maladies. And it's not always a physical manifestation diagnosis. A lot of times it's, a mental health
Mhm.
diagnosis.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of suffering inside of ourself that can lead to, like addictions and suicide and
Oh, yeah.
overwhelming depression, treatment resistant depression, treatment
Mhm.
resistant PTSD. That might not
Mhm.
necessarily be physical, but it is absolutely it's like a disease of our emotional body.
Absolutely. And that goes to speak to what I mentioned about the external versus internal
Yeah.
wounds, scars. We're all walking around with them, and there's healing available, but it does require some looking in the mirror
Yeah.
and being vulnerable and being okay with that.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I call it tired of your own bullshit.
Yeah, that sums it up. I kind of was tired of my own bullshit.
Yeah, that's what I call it. Sometimes you just have to get honest with yourself and be like, oh my God, I'm so sick of myself. I can't do this anymore.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
And those are never easy conversations because you have to realize those times when you're the ass.
yes.
Yeah. And we all have them.
We
So,
absolutely do. And yeah, and I had to face some of those harsh, cold realities, looking at I said I looked like a Q-tip because I was just this pale, skinny thing with a head, no, no real face. And then to have to face some real truths about yourself while you look like that, it's like, okay, things are getting really real now.
mhm.
This
Yeah.
is all vulnerability. So,
Yeah.
but with the right, I reached out. I did get some help around some of the issues I was battling after treatment. And on the other side of all of that suffering and harsh looks in the mirror, has been a beautiful awakening
Mhm.
and some beautiful truths about myself, about the
Yeah.
people I love, about people in general.
Mhm.
So I know people talk about the gifts, but there really have been some gifts. And
Mhm.
I'm very grateful, even with the struggles that I have, the pain management and still dealing with some emotional fallout and trauma and things like that. But just a whole new sense of gratitude.
Yeah. Yeah. And it sounds to me like whenever the waves of trauma and the waves of emotion and all of that hits you, it sounds like you're not trying to stuff it from just hearing like what you're saying and how you're talking about it. And that is so important to honor that because there is a part of us, there's a technique called internal family systems, and it's
Hmm.
parts work. It is talking to the different parts and pieces that live within us because we all have them. We all have the inner judge, the inner critic, the inner child, and all these different parts and pieces. And when we dishonor the inner judge or the inner critic, the one that beats us up all the time, it just gets louder and it
Yes,
just screams even louder. So it's so important to learn to have a relationship with that and find out, what does it want? What is it trying to do? Because somewhere deep down, it believes it's trying to help us. And as
right.
painful as those messages are, sometimes you just have to marinate in them and stew in the discomfort of those messages and honor them and accept them. And then they'll start to go away.
That's I love that. I love what you just said. And I'm starting to get a little emotional, which is okay.
Yeah, it's
I
okay.
I'm comfortable with that now. I
Yeah.
don't apologize for crying anymore. I don't
Yeah.
apologize for,
Mhm.
welling up and feeling overwhelmed with emotion at times.
Mhm.
Um, when those things come back to me, the trauma, the flashbacks,
Mhm.
the I learned an interesting technique of asking, okay, you're back. What are you here to teach me?
Mhm.
Okay, I'm having these feelings. I'm revisiting this situation. What am I supposed to learn? Why am I back in this space?
Mhm.
Okay. And when you approach it that way and this isn't supposed to be happening and I shouldn't be feeling this way. Let me do something to
Mhm.
divert my feelings. Let me get on social media. Let me buy something. Let me drink something.
Mhm.
And you just sit with it and observe it. You can say, okay, I was supposed to learn from this. I didn't
Mhm.
learn everything I was supposed to learn yet. So that's why it's coming back. And
Right.
it's not as scary that way. It feels safer
Mhm.
and enlightening. And usually I do come out on the other side of it saying, okay, well, that was an uncomfortable thing, but I'm still here.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I learned something from it. So it's okay.
Right. Yeah. All those voices, all those emotions, all of those uncomfortable emotions, uncomfortable sensations. I really loathe when people call them negative and positive or good and bad.
Mhm.
Because it's all information and it's all feedback and it's all messages meant for
Yeah.
us.
Yes.
It's
And
not
when you
meant to, like anger, for example, is not meant to be projected out. It's a message for you. So, yeah, sorry, I interrupted you again.
No, but this is great dialogue because
Okay.
I completely understand that now. If you had said that to me 2 years ago, I would have thought I understood. I may have even pretended to understand, but I
Mhm.
wouldn't have really understood
Yeah.
because I pushed away those feelings. I was
Mhm.
uncomfortable with those feelings. They would come out, and when they did come out, they usually came out in an unhealthy way.
Mhm.
So, all of those negative emotions, grief, anger, resentment, all of it, instead of learning from it, I'd stuff it down, and then it would just come
Yeah.
out and be just ugly, and
Right.
no good would come of it. So I
Yeah.
understand what you're saying, and there's there's a lot of beauty in it,
Mhm.
in the negative emotions, because
Mhm.
you realize that we're all just students. We're just, if
Mhm.
we could just sit down and just listen, the
Yeah.
universe really does teach us, and we have the capacity to teach ourselves
Yeah.
and help ourselves.
Yeah. We are both student and teacher within.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And cancer was the first time where I practiced any compassion with myself,
Mm-hmm.
where and that's something, thankfully, that I'm coming back to now post treatment. For a little while I lost that, and it put me in that dark place.
Mm-hmm.
But now I have compassion with myself. I think, if one of my friends was having a day like this, what would I do?
Mm-hmm.
Would I tell her go get a mani-pedi? Would I tell her, drink some wine or watch some Netflix? No. I'd tell her, what would what would feel what looks like self-care for you
Mm-hmm.
today? And I ask myself that. And sometimes it's a cup of tea, sometimes it's curling up with my favorite blanket, sometimes it's my dogs,
Mm-hmm.
time with my family. That's self-care.
Yeah.
That's healing for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And another thing that I'm noticing from what you're saying, you haven't said this outright, but what I'm noticing from what you're saying is it sounds like you've gone from this shift from noticing that your values came from everything in the world around you to now noticing your values come from within, extrinsic versus intrinsic. And that's huge whenever we start to tap into our intrinsic values.
Yes. I'm glad you said that. I actually did an exercise recently, um, with my therapist about values,
Mhm.
and you're probably familiar with it. I'd never seen it before, but it was a sheet, and you would mark things from 1 to 5, how you value different things
Mhm.
and, qualities. And my top values were, spirituality, health, family.
Mhm.
There was nothing in there, external beauty,
Mhm.
material possessions, power, um, control. There's nothing in there about that.
Mhm.
It was about, I want to be healthy, and health is not just being able to run 5 miles or
Mhm.
fit into your jeans from when you were 25 or whatever.
Mhm.
Health, wholeness, whole health, spirituality, my connection with the universe, with higher power, God, whatever you call it, and my family. And that extends to my best friends, the people who know me best, the people that really love me. So that's what matters.
Mhm.
That's what matters.
Yeah, it absolutely. And
And when I
that's a huge
live,
shift.
and when I live in alignment with that, I know that I'm being completely authentic. I'm being the person I'm supposed to be today. I don't have to figure out what my big purpose is, or what I'm meant to be or do. Just can be content with today. I am living a full life in alignment with my values, the things that matter most to me.
Mhm.
And when I'm in alignment with that, everything else kind of falls into place. it leaves a lot of free space in my mind and in my heart to be receptive to all of the wonderful things that I'm now attracting. The people, the connections, meet up, we stumbled across one another. I mean, it's just beautiful when you're open to it, how it happens. And it doesn't have to be forced. It's not that hard.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. It's so perfect. Yes.
It is.
And I love how we met.
Isn't it great? I know.
It is. It is. It's great. I learned my lesson on that too.
Yeah, there's always lessons in every day too. Yeah, there's no finish line. No, I'm totally aligned. Everything's beautiful now.
Yeah. Well, and one thing I like to emphasize, because, again, I'm a trauma specialist and I really work with emotional dysregulation with people. And I put a post on my Facebook page earlier this week because I found myself a couple days ago angrier than I've been in a really, really long time, to the point that I lost my shit and
I saw that
at somebody and wasn't proud of like what I said or how I acted.
Yeah.
And, and we all have our stuff that comes up. It's not that we'll never get triggered. It's not that we'll never get angry. It's not that, I'm going to be peace and love and oming the rest of my life. We still have all of the same emotions everybody else has. And some days we still lose our shit. We still have our struggles. And the important thing for me is looking at, okay, this didn't knock me out for 2 weeks. I didn't beat myself up for 2 weeks like I might have done, a decade or 2 decades ago.
Isn't that the
and
truth? Just
mulling over it and dwelling over it and going, oh my God, I can't believe you said that, or I can't believe you did that. And
ruminating.
Exactly. And realizing that there are different parts, again, that internal family systems, that IFS work, Richard Schwartz, there are different parts of me. And one of the parts of me really wants to stand up and advocate for myself. And the other part of me wants to do it in a healthy way. And, that anger came up, and that part of me that wants to advocate for myself, let the anger take over my words for a few minutes. And at the same time, that critic doesn't have to beat me up. So when they're not in alignment, we create this battle and this war within ourselves. And when we're out of alignment with ourselves, there's a lot of internal suffering that goes on. And it's not easy. Like this, I think most of us understand just from high school biology. Well, I hope most of us do. Homeostasis, like the body tries to keep itself in balance.
Regulated.
Every day, every moment, it's a back and forth. This pendulum swing. So, sometimes we're more out of balance than others. Well, that homeostatic balance goes far beyond the physical body. That applies to our spiritual body, our mental body, our emotional body, and the alignment of all four of those as well. So, there are layers to the homeostatic balance. And my emotions were a little bit out of balance the other day, but they came back into alignment much quicker than they used to.
I can relate to that.
Yeah, and that is so important.
Yes, we are human.
And we're always going to be human
with a lot of stuff coming at us. We have our
Right.
moods. We get hangry. We get frustrated. Of course.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm still me. And I'm from Miami, so I can curse and drive like a maniac with the best of them.
Yes.
I had to slow my roll when I moved to Colorado because I thought, oh, people here actually stop at red lights. And middle fingers are not encouraged. Okay. So I had to dial it down a little bit. So yes, I totally get what you mean. We all lose it sometimes. But again, I think it's what I'm finding is all of this is kind of, I can relate to things in fitness terms, but it's like exercising a muscle, and the more you exercise it, the faster you recover, the stronger you get, the easier it is to regulate and integrate what you're doing with the rest of your life. And that's kind of how I look at the growth that I'm going through. It is like exercising a muscle. Sometimes it gets fatigued and I need to take a little time to regroup and heal and rest. And then I go back out and I find that I can do things just a little bit differently, I can handle things a little better than I used to. So it's a process.
And those are so important to notice. It's so important. It doesn't matter if anybody else in the world notices your
Right.
progress. If you notice it from within yourself, that is so important because you're like, oh, wow, this is a little victory. Yeah, maybe like I did the other day, maybe I lost my shit, but that's the first time I've spoken to somebody like that in a really, really, really long time.
Yes.
So that in and of itself is progress. And then bringing myself back into balance
Into regulate.
within minutes, that's
Mm-hmm.
another huge step. So other people can call it a failure. They can say I'm not good as a trauma specialist, whatever. Then don't call me, don't work with me. That's fine. Go work with somebody that resonates with you. For me, those are huge things to notice and just celebrate those little victories whenever you notice them.
Yes, and I think what you just said, not even if nobody else notices,
Mhm.
seeking outside validation. That's something that I think eh, a lot of us tend to look for,
Yeah,
and I've noticed I don't do that like I used to.
yeah,
I don't ask others, how do you think I'm doing? Am I good enough? Do
yeah.
I look okay? Am I acting okay? Am I being okay?
Mhm.
And now I can check with myself because I trust myself because I am authentic now. I know
Mhm.
who I am. And instead of looking externally, do you think I'm doing okay? Am I doing this right? I can ask myself those questions
Yeah.
and trust myself to give an honest answer
Mhm.
and to not beat myself up if I don't like the answer, to
Yes.
just observe it and say, yeah, I could work on that.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
And so many of us, before we have our awakenings or dark night of the soul or
Yes.
crises or whatever you want to call it,
Uh-huh.
before we have that, so much of our behavior and our action and so much of what we do in life is not because it's what we want. And it's not because it's what other people want. It's because it's what we think other people want from us. So we're
Okay.
projecting into other people like, okay,
Yes.
I think this is what they want from me. So I've got to live up to what I think they want. And
Yes.
so and
Yeah,
so it becomes this crazy like feedback loop.
it
And
does. And it's not what
yeah,
they want. I told
yeah.
my kids recently, I've told them, I actually used to think that worrying about you made me a better mother. That somehow I had to devote a certain amount of time each day to worrying about my children.
Hmm.
That didn't do anything except create fear, anxiety, the need for control, a lack of communication between my children and myself. It wasn't doing anyone any good. And if I had just asked, what do you need from me? They would have said, well, don't freak out when I don't call you back within 5 minutes. I'm not in a ditch. You don't need to fret so much. Trust me a little more that you did a pretty good job, Mom. You know what you're doing. You taught us right from wrong. We're
Hmm.
going to be okay.
Hmm.
Instead of just, peck, 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 peck. Let me be, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. They knew I was there. I
Hmm.
didn't need to push so hard.
Yeah.
So,
And forgiving ourselves because we didn't just make that up. We learned it.
of course.
That was instilled in us from the time we were little. It's part of our culture. It's
Oh,
not
for
just
sure.
your family, it's not just my family, it's Western culture. So that's
Yes.
kind of the mom stereotype. And there's and I like to talk about archetypes. I'm a big fan of studying archetypes,
Uh-huh.
and there's a huge difference between the mom stereotype and the mom archetype. And I would encourage people to read up on archetypes and step into the archetypal patterns rather than the stereotypical patterns.
I
Because
like
there's
that.
a huge difference. Huge.
I'd like to learn more about that. Thank you.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Interesting.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah. Well, Victoria, we're not out of time yet. We still have a little bit of time yet
Okay.
left. So I'm just curious, while we're recording, we still have time left. Where is the best place for listeners to look you up, to find you, to follow you, if anybody is interested?
Okay. Well, like I said, a lot of what I'm doing is still in the works. It's
Mm-hmm.
all, I don't have a grand master plan. I'm trusting the universe, and it's beautiful how everything is unfolding.
Mm-hmm.
I am launching my podcast after the crisis in just a month or so. I'm
Mm-hmm.
interviewing some wonderful people, mental health experts, wellness experts, spirituality people. I'd like to interview you, trauma specialist. I hope you'll be on my show. But so for right now, I've started a Facebook community, and it's called After the Crisis with Victoria. You can find it on Facebook.
Okay.
I sent you the link, so you can
Mm-hmm.
post that later. And it's a free community, and I just launched it. I don't know, maybe 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
We're just getting very real. We're talking about how we perceive ourselves. We're talking about the circle of life, which is part of one of the coaching tools I use that
Mm-hmm.
talks about primary and secondary food. What we, like you said earlier, what we eat and drink is just one small part of what makes up the whole person and
Right.
true wellness, being a complete person. So we talk about that. I also share some exercise tips and recipes and things like that, because that's like I said, that's been my passion since I was very, very young.
Mm-hmm.
But taking it to a whole new level,
Mm-hmm.
talking about getting vulnerable, being real with one another. And I love the conversations that are happening already. I've had people come in and they're sharing some really vulnerable stuff and getting support from some other group members. There's some bonding happening in there. I love it. People are participating in the challenges, the exercises that I give them, as far as, if you can't give yourself an appreciation today, give one to a stranger
Mm-hmm.
that you don't, and share that with me. Tell me what that's like and how that affected your day. Little things like that. And so I'm enjoying that so much, and just so excited to share what I'm doing, my coaching and my story. And my podcast is going to be a place to let people share their stories, what
Mm-hmm.
they've been through, what it's like now, how they're navigating life after their crisis. And I'll also be using my coaching skills to help them um, find some hope and some healing. And you talked about some of the unhealthy things that we do during or after trauma. Maybe taking a look at some of our habits that we've developed with eating, drinking, social media addiction, sugar addiction, and trying to fill in those dark spaces with some light, some healthier choices, healthier ways of going through your day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds wonderful.
Thank
Um,
you. I'm
yeah,
excited
I'm
about it.
actually in the process of taking myself out of a bunch of Facebook groups. I got myself into, oh, you're my friend, I'll follow your group. Sure, I'll support you. And then I get all these notifications. I'm sorry, I don't care about so many of them. It just doesn't align with who I am.
Yeah,
This one I actually sound interested in.
I'm glad to
So,
hear that. I
yes.
would love to have you as a part of it, have you
Yeah.
participate. I'd love oh gosh, your insight and feedback. And yeah, that would be great. I'm the same way. I thought groups were kind of new recently, and I joined a bunch, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my goodness, I think I'm a part of like 95 groups or something. Maybe I need to dial this down.
Yeah. And a lot of them I was trying to be supportive, and so many of them I'm just like, what am I doing?
And
And
they can get a little toxic at times too. That's
exactly. And if I'm not interested, I get it. They're the groups that a lot of my friends are doing, but if I'm not really interested in the content, I'm just taking up space. How supportive is that really? If
I
I'm not
agree.
participating and I'm just,
Mhm.
if I'm just another number, and I would rather have a smaller, intimate group that is actually engaged rather than just this big umbrella
Oh,
number,
for
just a,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah. What I love about this chapter that is just beginning to unfold is, um, I know that I am spiritually aligned, that
Hmm.
everything I'm doing is from such a guided place.
Hmm.
And um, I don't have expectations attached to the outcome. I just am doing this day by day, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just beautiful. I don't care if I have 5 group members or
Mm-hmm.
5,000. It doesn't matter. I'm just here to listen, to serve, to help,
Mm-hmm.
and just let people know that what they've been through matters,
Mm-hmm.
where they're going matters, and you know I use the term a period at the end of the sentence, that we don't have to put a period at the end of every sentence. It can keep going and keep
Mm-hmm.
flowing. And um
Yeah. Like who was it? Wasn't it Hemingway that was famous for writing paragraphs that were all one long
oh, that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
I
So yeah,
think it was Hemingway, right?
it was. I don't remember where I heard that, put a period at the end of the sentence, but I love that,
Yeah.
because I feel like with people's crises, it's like, oh yeah, she went through a divorce. She went through it. Well, we don't really know if she's through it,
Right.
I mean, she lost her mother. Okay, where is she with all of that?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a period at the end of that sentence, or is she still struggling? We don't know.
Right.
So I'm just here to listen, let people talk, share their stories, share their struggles, and share their victories and joy, and hopefully, help them along the way as I heal myself. This is part of
Mhm.
my healing as well.
Yeah. And we're never done with our healing.
No.
But I mean, if you're done, you're probably dead.
Well, that's exactly.
There's always more work to do. I don't know if you've heard, but like our conscious mind is really about 5% of who we are.
Yes.
And the rest of it is, people say it's the unconscious mind. I split the unconscious mind into the subconscious and the implicit. The subconscious is, I call it our visionary. It
Mm,
sees the world through images and visions. It's our dreams, it's our daydreams, it's our goals. Like, where do you see yourself? The mind's eye. The implicit mind experiences the world, experiences life through the language of sensation and emotion.
mhm.
Both of them are nonverbal, and those nonverbal parts are 95% of who we are. It's our hidden control panel. It's what drives our behaviors. It's what drives our thoughts. It's what causes our emotions to surface. And
Mhm.
and we think that this little thinking mind is in control and driving the bus, and
Right.
it really isn't.
No, no, isn't yeah, that is the truth. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when you're done healing, when you're done growing, whatever you want to call it, you're probably dead, but there's different versions of dead, you
Yes.
know?
Yes.
So I
Yeah.
do observe people who are not in any, they don't seem to be on any growth trajectory
Yeah.
or
Right.
healing path. And I'm like,
Yeah.
they have a pulse, but I don't see a lot of life in there.
Yes. That's where we need our
Yeah.
10-foot poles.
Yes, exactly. But,
Yeah.
like the other one is, as long as there's breath, there's hope, right?
Yes.
So,
Yes, absolutely.
yep.
Yep. Well, Victoria, this has been absolutely a pleasure to have you on the show. You have come through this with so much wisdom.
Oh gosh, thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you.
Thank
Yes.
you for having me. It's been an
Yeah.
honor, and I've learned so much from you, and I'm excited to learn more from you and what you're doing. It's fascinating stuff.
Yeah. I'm so glad that we've made this connection. This is fantastic.
Me too.
Yeah. So before we sign off, Victoria, do you have any final tips or bits of wisdom for our listeners?
Oh, well, get your mammogram. Do your self breast exams. If you feel something, push your medical team. Don't take no for an answer. Do not be afraid to advocate for yourself. Don't be afraid to take the time for yourself to take care of your well being, your health. And you're not being selfish, especially to the ladies out there. We're not being selfish by doing this, by carving out time for ourselves. We're doing everyone around us a favor.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much, Victoria. It's been a
Thank
pleasure to
you.
have you with us today.
It's been a pleasure to be here. I'm very grateful. Thank you.
And for everybody else, you are listening to Yes And. If you're interested in learning more about me or the Yes And podcast, you can visit my website at jenniferwhitaker.com. I will see all of you next week.
Thanks, Jennifer.
We have just concluded another episode of the Yes And podcast with Jennifer Whitaker. For additional resources, please visit our website, jenniferwhitaker.com. Leave a review if you enjoyed the show and find it useful. Until next time, continue challenging conventional thinking and keep moving forward.